Welcome to this session of Tech Talk. We are your hosts, Oliver and Birgit, and we have this series of events to bridge the gap between recruitment and engineering. Oliver, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Oliver and I do sustainable recruitment.
And I'm Birgit. I work as a leadership coach and engineering leader. I advise people about creating high performing teams through culture. Our guest today is Augustina Kangni. Augustina is a social entrepreneur and founder of Skilling, an HR startup focused on improving team collaboration through behavior-driven solutions. With a background in IT management and business administration, she brings years of experience leading cross-cultural teams and building marketing strategies for digital education and talent programs across 11 African countries and Germany. Augustina is passionate about how AI can be used to foster better intercultural collaboration, especially in remote and hybrid work environments. Her work focuses on making tech talent development more inclusive and culturally aware, while also questioning how cultural identity is misrepresented in technical systems. Through her work with startups, accelerators, and social ventures, she advocates for a future of work that is not only data driven but also deeply human and globally connected. When she's not building tech solutions or mentoring BIPOC talents, Augustina explores wellness through massage therapy, travels off the beaten path, and recharges with Afrobeat rhythms and soul food connections. That's a lot. I like it. I like it. Augustina, why this topic? The topic which we have is coded cultural gaps, right? Why do we have this topic today, and why is it so important for you?
Okay, thank you, first of all, for inviting me, Birgit and Oliver. It's a great pleasure being here today. All right, why am I doing this, and why is this topic important? Actually, this started quite early, a few years ago, when I was part of a startup myself, where I was employed at a startup, basically. And that startup was on a mission to help tech talents, basically, who are based across the African continent, to get trained, certified, and also into a job. And I was back then responsible for the marketing department, which means that the team and I, we were developing marketing strategies, rolled them out across the whole continent to get applicants from everywhere, because the training program the company had back then was a remote program anyways. So people could join from everywhere. And one of the challenges that we were facing, and in particular also my team, because we were responsible to find the right people or to market the right way, so we find the right people for the program, was that we had quite a lot of very talented people who, for instance, met in their free time to code. So they didn't go to club or disco party, but they had like coding clubs and met there and worked on their own projects and were quite hyped about them. So technically they were very skilled, but the problem there was that they didn't really know how to work in a different setting, if I may say it that way, because they only work like be it face to face and with peers, for instance, but they didn't really know how to work, for instance, with a team or with a boss from another context, especially in a remote setting, which means that we were facing some challenges while helping those people getting into employment, that the teams they were working with didn't really get along with each other. And this is where I was like, okay, it's not the technical skills that's a problem, but it's more the way they work together, they communicate and collaborate, and also understand the cultures. And this question actually never, I never found the appropriate answer to that question. And this is actually why my journey started this way, to really
Yeah,
see, okay, how can you use technology to bring people closer together by making visible what sometimes to me or to you or to anyone else is like quite obvious, but to the people who are involved in the moment, it's not.
I mean, I also witnessed some cultural differences and misinterpretation, and therefore also perhaps also some miscommunication. Do you have any really vivid examples that you can bring that so that we understand what is a cultural misunderstanding?
Yes, definitely. I think it starts with, from my perspective, maybe minor small things. For instance, we had like I came across like a couple of people, and one person in particular who was working on a project. I mean, really nailed the interview, the case study, and the different steps until the person made it into the job. But then the problem was that the person was coding and working on something, and was hitting roadblocks. Like the person didn't really know, it was a he, so it was a man. He didn't really know how to meet the deadline. But at the same time, didn't really know how to approach his boss to tell him like, hey, I have a problem with this and that. Can we see and look for a solution together? So instead of openly approaching that in the team meeting they had, he rather like got quiet, worked like overnight as well. So this was what he told us afterwards as well, because he didn't manage to stay in the job. And really was pushing hard to get to meet the deadline, but he wasn't able to do this because he was trying to solve it by himself. And at the same time, his boss was thinking, oh, I don't see the person working because I don't hear anything from him. I don't see any results. So maybe he's just lazy or not interested in a job. So they quickly escalated that. I mean, this wasn't the consequence right away to fire the person, but of course, it's like it leaves a picture that you don't want your boss to think of you. So that was one of the challenges. And as I remember, the boss, we had some companies who hired some clients basically who hired the tech talents, and that company was from the UK. And I was in the loop because I was interviewing both of them, the company and also the tech talent they hired, to understand the problem, so I can actually adjust the marketing campaigns to properly address either the right people or to address them differently. And to me in that moment, it was quite obvious, like, okay, if you have a problem, just speak to your boss. I mean, like, where's the challenge?
But Augustine, where is the cultural difference here? What you're describing could be also a random problem of a random junior.
That's right. But what I do see is that it is indeed a cultural topic, because if you look into, I mean, I'm from the West African country, country like Togo. So what do you see there more in comparison to the Western countries is in particularly the way people either address challenges or behave in a certain way is often linked to the culture they are from. For instance, maybe to name another example, from the Asian culture, for instance, the way you greet, or the way you approach maybe a female, or you don't approach it, that's indeed rooted in the culture where the people come from. So from that perspective, of course, I mean, I agree to what you say, Oliver. It could also be anyone. But if you look further, that's definitely something that's rooted in the culture.
So there are some really outspoken cultures that when they face a problem, I mean, when we talk about a group, then we talk about a group where a certain behavior we see more than in other groups. And in other groups, we see other behaviors more. Yeah, so statistics, basically. And this is what makes psychology also very interesting, because it's like it's not pure analysis where you have like a set of group where a thing is true for every person. It's just basically a number of people where it's true. Yeah. And
Exactly.
so what I and this I can see as well, because I also can see uh, a tendency for certain cultures where they're very, very outspoken when they face a challenge. This examples of this could be that they complain about not understanding the task, or or if they want to bring up a person instead of a thing, then they complain about a person that doesn't tell the task properly. But they may also not, like, of course, there are people who are aware and communicate well and say, like, look, I have not understood the task. Could you please explain it to me again? But there are also people who are also talking in a way that they still don't see that there could be a misunderstanding, or like see the certainty for the mistake by themselves. They would still be outspoken and say, I need information in order to fulfill the task. So this is what they would basically will bring up, right?
Exactly.
Or like the maybe they are this aware to say, this is not a task that can be done just in one day. This is when they say, I need help with that.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, Birgit. And like you said already, it's the way, for instance, how you express things, right? And if you are working with people from other cultures, and you are more, like you say, like the outgoing person saying things the direct way. I mean, that's a common saying about Germans, for instance, right? And I also see it within myself, that sometimes I'm really like, okay, let's go straight to the point, and what's the problem, or what is this about?
Beating around the
And I
bush.
also had that, exactly, and I also had it even with my team, where I was like, okay, guys, what is it that we're right now talking about? And people might see me then as very pushy, while them, again, in their cultural context, and even just talking about the neighboring country, I had teammates from Ghana, for instance, and they definitely see this as rather rude, or they get very, kind of afraid of approaching me. While me, I'm just trying to be open and honest, but for them, honesty means something different, for instance. Or if I ask them, like, hey, can you do this, or do you have this? Can you get this done by this and that day? And they'd be like, yes, sure, of course. They always say yes rather than say no, and say, no, this is not possible because of this and that. They would rather say yes and see how they can get it done. And then later on, you may notice, okay, I'm not sure whether this person will get it definitely done. Then you have to go back and ask again, hey, how far are you in the process? Do you have, any challenges? Can you share some thoughts on the process? So that's some of the kind of things that you notice, okay, there are some differences.
So Augustine, these cultural differences, they seem to be a major obstacle in people collaborating. I'm wondering, like, how AI can be of help to solve this riddle.
I think that's a very, very good question. And one that I mean, as I started my entrepreneurial journey myself, that was also the leading question that I had in mind while building Skilling. Because on the one hand, communication is very personal, and that happens when people interact. So if you put AI in between, it's like you are removing the human touch or the human connection. But what we see, or what I want to achieve, is to use AI as a guidance to build more human interaction. And the thing is, how AI can do this, I believe, is simply by the data set we provide AI with to learn from, because that's basically the problem. That's actually people sitting behind the computer and behind the large language models, filtering, putting information and data sets in there, which are quite standardized in a way, also looking into cultural context. And that's where the problem starts. So that in the end then says, okay, the Americans are like this, the Germans are like that, the Asians are like that, the Africans are like that. So if we manage to get a diversified data set, and not only putting into the cultural context, but also the personal context of, okay, that person thinks like this and that, that person is rather like this and that, and putting it into a cultural context, then I believe that AI can really help to overcome those cultural biases and patterns.
I have so many questions here.
Come again?
I'm
I have some
wondering,
technical
like,
questions.
where or how do you generate the data to train the AI? That's the first
Generating the
one.
data.
And I'm sorry, that's actually not really professional, but second is, how do you differentiate from the person and the cultural origin? Because that might influence behavior and communication as well.
Definitely.
As I've heard.
Yes, definitely. So I don't think there is like a one solution that fits it all to this, or one wrong or one right answer. So what I'm doing is to work with rather scientifically proven tests and assessments that, on the one hand, assessment sounds so harsh, like not really assessing, but rather analyzes the personality type of that particular user or person in front of you, and then putting that into a cultural context. Meaning, okay, Augustine is working with culture X in the context of blah blah blah, and I have a personality trait of being quite direct, straightforward. I like strategies. I'm very tidy, blah blah blah, and these kind of things. And then putting it that by that means into the context. And this is how I'm trying to train the AI based on individuals who are in a cultural context, like the work environment they work in, instead of using different cultural patterns and putting them on the people. I don't know whether that makes sense to you.
Okay, so you're not using, for the sake of simplicity, let's say you're not putting the Ghana model on the top of a person.
Exactly.
You are using the results of a personal behavioral analysis, basically.
Exactly.
Which leads me to the question, what kind of model are you using?
So I'm still in the development process, and I'm not a coder myself, but I work with the biggest large language models out there, so it's not a big secret.
But I guess it's also, I mean, large language models are there to output some stuff, some text. I guess there needs to be like a special model for the behavior itself. So
That's
Ah,
what I was
okay.
talking about.
so it's similar to the stuff that I am doing right now. You have a series of models inside a pipe that work together, which means if you do, for example, you have a conversation inside the room, you need a speech to text model, and then you have text, that you can simply also put into ChatGPT, and it will talk to ChatGPT. But that text you take and put it into the self-made stuff that Augustina is doing, this model, and this will analyze basically the words. Maybe also Augustina has, this is my assumption, Augustina also has some audio models that analyze the voice of tone and stuff like
Yes,
that.
I'm not working with audio right now. For now, it's just written text basically.
Mhm.
Because if I mean, audio would be the next step, but here as well, you don't want the user to feel like
Yeah,
AI is watching you, and no matter what you do. So I also noticed that it requires a lot of trust for the
definitely.
people to first off trusting the AI that it doesn't um, analyze you in a way and share the data then somehow with your superior, with your bosses, and all of that. So I don't work with audio for now, so it's mainly
Yeah.
based on text. Yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty easy to connect it to audio. It's like
Yes, definitely.
you
That's for
can
sure.
do
Yeah.
even use open source text speech to text in order to make
Yeah.
it whatever is being said to make it then audio text.
Text. Yeah.
And then when you have it in text and it goes to Augustine, a special model that is based on research, then this model will output something, and it can give you something displayed as data or even displayed as text again. You know, this is
Exactly. That's
amazing. This is the
yeah.
pipeline basically, in really rough.
Yes, I mean, yes, and also, I mean, the personality tests that also play like a huge role. Where on one hand, we do depend on whatever the human is putting or sharing of information, but on the other hand, it also gives you the full control of what you actually want to share and what you want AI to analyze about yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. What I also find quite interesting, and I hope I'm not getting too technical in here, is the what Oliver was asking also of preventing too much bias. Because if we
Mhm.
are having AI in general and we do classification, this is the term for it, then we can basically determine the grouping also based on some stuff that we set inside this model. And they can be quite granular or they can be quite vague, basically, those groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I can basically group a single dot, which means possibly a single person. This could be a group, but I could also, based on some patterns that multiple people see or multiple people have, I could group these as well. And then in between, I can basically like fine tune the groups basically in order to differentiate them
Exactly.
among from each other. And this
Yeah, exactly.
basically it naturally creates problems, the stuff that we see, namely also the biases, right? So either we have too few biases, and then we have a model that doesn't work as accurate as we need it, or we may have a thing that is too biased. And this is why I think, like from my junior perspective, because I don't do data science for so long, maybe a solution could be to like define the right groups, right, in order to like prevent the bias from happening.
Yes, and I think to me at least bias is nothing. It's not like a bug or something, but it's rather it really reflects, like you mentioned it. It really reflects the data and the assumptions that we put or feed the system with ourselves. So I think I agree. If we manage to use more diversified data or put different patterns, more context as well, instead of just saying that, okay, this person is coming as originally from this or that country or this or that place, then you can definitely train the AI to be to see the person behind and to see it more diversified in a way.
Mm-hmm. You have spoken about trusting AI
Mhm.
from the end user perspective. Do you think that users will be able to trust AI to assess? Let's use this word, to assess a certain situation.
I think you can't, I mean, it's everywhere, right? So you can't deny the either existence or the usage or the help of AI, and it will get more and more. So what I do see already, also speaking to customers, and just this week I onboarded a new team, a smaller team of people, is that it also requires a lot of education as well. Because some of the questions they had was like, oh, okay, who will the data be shared with, or and who else has access to it. So I think it requires a lot of education in terms of, okay, really explaining what will happen or why we do that, why is that assessment beforehand. And what I also do is that it's highly anonymized, of course, and people have some smaller gadgets like code words, for instance. I can pick a code word for myself, and by that means I ensure that nobody else or somehow by accident gets access to whatever I say or whatever I write. So in that sense, yes, I do see a certain curiosity, of course, but the benefit must be very, very clear. So it's not really enough to just say, okay, the AI is analyzing who I am or how I behave in a certain work environment, but it becomes a help to the user when it also tells you, okay, you are in a meeting with Augustine. These are the 3 main points you should maybe look after when sharing or when starting a discussion about topic X, for instance. So when people really feel like, okay, this helps me and is empowering me in whatever I'm doing, then they are rather open to explore and to trust the AI and the tool as well. Instead of just saying like, okay, this is analyzing you and this is who you are or how you think or click, whatever. But rather to see it as a empowering tool. And this is also how I'm trying to approach this.
Yeah, I think this is rather new because we see that AI tools are conquering the workplace. Definitely, at the beginning there was lots of people saying you shall not use AI for work, and then suddenly we have like AI being deployed on their own server, so that employees are able to use it, and we even have AI listening in meetings for sure. And this is why I think this one, of course, we are not used to it, that in AI is listening of what we say. And from what I also observe is that they are definitely not 100% correct when they try to sum every note up. But I can definitely see the benefit of an AI, writing down the underlying cultural submessages, for example. Right.
I mean, we always tend to think that AI works with lots of biases. Here we are using AI to prevent or at least to uncover the biases.
Exactly, and that's really that's really one of the thoughts or one of the conclusions I came to myself, because I had this this inner conflict of saying, okay, I do want to work on that challenge, but it's so huge, it's so complex, because we are simply human and human are complex beings. And then to go there and say like, okay, AI is a solution for everything. I mean, I'm also questioning myself, saying like, okay, Augustine, like, would you use it yourself, just analyzing yourself, or what would bring a benefit or, something helpful to you? And this is where I think people use it, because it really gives them a relief of a work day or, whatever they do. So yeah, that's definitely also the way for me for what I'm also building to go.
I think it would be super beneficial, because especially, I mean, not necessarily with the situations where you are like have a super positive feeling about it, but especially with the meetings where you see, oh, there was a conflict, you know, and you don't understand why. So someone gets super frustrated and you don't know why. Someone gets mad at you and you don't know why. I think this is especially when such an AI can help to understand what is it that the person actually wanted, or even for the person getting mad and frustrated. If they're still open for the thing and not for the emotion, there are different layers, right? So they already went onto the emotional layer, but if they're still open for the thing layer, for the actual situation, they could eventually also come down again from the emotional layer and communicate the situation again. When
Exactly.
something is telling them, hey, this is the actual situation, and so on and so forth, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I would not underestimate the importance of the personality analysis to feed the AI. I've worked with personality analysis, and by the way, I would never call it a personality test. Candidates hate that because it implies that you can fail or you can pass. The analysis is not about passing or failing.
Exactly.
It's analyzing your preferences, how you want to be approached, for example, or how you tend to approach others. And there are so many models out there to analyze the personality and behavior that I would choose wisely. If I would be you, which model is my preferred one? You haven't asked me for a recommendation, but you get it anyways. Do we have a model of your choice already?
Yes. I also spoke to like psychologists and read like scientific papers and all of that. So I agree there are so many different models out there. I'm currently exploring with some of the like the biggest frameworks like the Big Five, DISC, 16 personality. So these are the models that I 16 personalities. You don't like it? Why? Tell me. I mean, yes, I mean, I know the pros and cons of it, but what are your personal reasons for that?
Like DISC and 16 personalities, like I wouldn't do that. Big Five is one of the most popular ones also in the scientific environment, also by chosen by psychologists. 16 personalities can be easily faked. It's something that was built as a sellable product, basically, not so much to really analyze and explain like Big Five. Like seriously, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I just had a conversation with a potential client, and they were not from HR or recruitment. I actually shouldn't have this, but they were former policemen having decided to found their own company, which was a property management company. And they really want to make it really, really extra 120% right. So they decided that every candidate needs to pass a personality analysis. And they have chosen 16 personalities, which, you can just redo the test in this scenario. If you don't like the result, then you simply redo the test and share the result with your future employer.
Yes, but I think every test you can fake like that. Like
Yeah, I mean,
It
it's
depends what environment you use.
again and again and just like changing your inputs.
Like
many,
my company is offering something like this, and with that you cannot redo the test.
Okay,
so
yeah,
so
that would
This is
be
for
also
sure.
my recommendation, not to
so
like
so let me,
submit it
let me put
once.
in some lights into this one. So first of all, we psychology is not pure analysis. Yeah, it's statistics, and then it came from, it's like it has a huge history of like many thousand years. It basically came from fear, I don't know, like belief. Yeah, it came from like your soul is inside your gut, for example. So many people back then had like interesting beliefs about the soul and the behavior, and why humans are humans. And even up until to the modern days, still inside the history, we have lots of psychology schools. So that's the term for different directions where psychology went in, where people follow different methods, different directions, and different opinions of how to analyze and psychotherapy a human. And which means it's still a big fuss what we have up to today. This is why we have so many researches and so many research papers that point into different directions, many directions. This is why the 10 fingers. And this is why we also may have, in the end, then different models that each work the different day. So from the science point of view, we haven't figured psychology out yet. So we don't have
Indeed.
that interesting formula that unifies it all that we try to do in physics, right? So we're
Indeed.
still trying to figure out many different points in psychology. And I must say, neurobiology is actually helping a lot here. This is why everything that we have and everything that we say, even with the stuff that we say it's not science, I would take it with a grain of salt, because I also have made the experience. If you have one test that is not scientific, you have a certain result, and you go to certain tests that are similar to DISC or whatever 4-type model. These are called the motivational models altogether. And you have similar results. This may actually indicate something. Yeah, you do different tests. You don't do them all. Yeah, I will tell you more about this. Why, like about repeating tests and also about moment basically taking a picture of your life while doing a test. But this is basically an indicator when in a short amount of time you do different tests and they point into the same direction, you may actually have a really good indicator. And then of course you need to be honest with yourself, and so on and so forth. But then there's also science, and again, take it with a grain of salt, that says that you might be, you who are taking the test, you might be the best person to actually assess yourself. Every outside assessment might be even more confusing. Then there is actual assessment that are like the 16 personality assessment. Yeah, lots of questions, having certain questions where you fill out like 1 to 10 or something like this, that are for actual personality disorder diagnosis. Yeah, so we have the same type of questions, same methods, 16 personalities, but also using inside Germany's health systems. They are approved, they are scientifically stamp on, and so on and so forth. So take everything with a grain of salt. Those tests that I'm mentioning about psychotherapy that people are taking in order to basically have a hint about a certain personality disorder, or some symptom that they can have. It doesn't need to be a disorder. These can be taken as moment pictures. So you think about the last 2 weeks, or you think about the last 3 months. Yeah. So basically these type of things, but you don't see it as your personality. You basically don't say, are you this person or are you that person? Basically they ask for, has this happened to you in the last 2 weeks? Has this happened to you, or do you feel like this in the last 2 weeks? And this is what these questions are asking. And as far as I remember, from the 16 personalities, they were also like kind of similar. Of one question I remember is basically, are you more of a person that goes into the big group, or are you more of a person that goes like into, I don't know, the stay at home, basically, something like this. And you in some questions you basically can identify yourself, and if you're honest to yourself and you really want to know what is your where do you feel, basically, where do you feel you belong to, it might actually work, and you might actually also get the same result later if you do it the same way. And this is why it's so unscientific, because we have definitions for the methods. Yeah, so for science we have methods, and they are well defined. And this is why the 16 personality test doesn't fit in, because it doesn't fit into the definitions of the methods.
Thanks for the science and psychology lesson here, Birgit.
You're welcome.
I mean, I definitely see your point, and one of the thoughts that I had, and that I mean, I have to admit, currently also a little bit experimenting with, is to. I mean, I agree. No, whenever we communicate or do whatever test, it's only a snippet of time and right in the moment, and maybe sometime in the future I behave differently, or in another context I behave differently. So what I'm also experimenting with is to look into performance cycles, let me name it that way, which means that, I mean, we all have a certain cycle that we, with our hormones, work and perform with, I don't know, whatever context. I move into another place, country, whatever, or have a stressful project or something. So depending on the cycle that I'm currently in, I adjust the way I communicate, or give feedback, share my ideas and thoughts, and so on and forth. And that's definitely also something that I want to implement, or see how it can be implemented. Not only looking into, okay, you do a questionnaire once or maybe every couple of weeks, but rather to look into, okay, is there maybe a certain pattern or cycle to detect by the AI? So the AI also learns, okay, Augustine is currently in her performance cycle X, and then helps me and provides different recommendations for the cycle I'm currently in. So that's also an interesting context. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this is something you don't want to share with your colleagues and your boss. I'm really sure about that.
I think it depends on the work culture. So yes and no. So yes and no, because it depends on a working culture. And again, if it helps me to better understand, like, okay, currently I'm in my peak performance, and currently I'm maybe, to whatever reasons or context, I'm not, then it definitely helps me to maybe postpone difficult meetings, or to know how to communicate that better in a certain way, instead of always communicating the same way, no matter which period or cycle I'm in.
Or being read the same way.
Or being read the same way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What I also find interesting in this comment, Augustina, is that the dynamics of a model that basically needs to learn, like when you adapt your behavior, the model basically wants to learn, because he's also a thing that I have learned from psychology, that the definition of a behavior pattern, or the definition of a pattern itself, right? This basically is like when you start a certain behavior, a certain strategy, basically. It's not called behavior yet. It's called a certain strategy. You purposely, and therefore you use more energy into it, have a different strategy for a certain situation. And if you repeat that strategy, it will at some point become a pattern. And this is then called behavior pattern. And then if you are still able, like after having learned this pattern, if you're still able to adapt your pattern again or adapt your behavior again to a certain situation, like let's say you see that a certain person is frustrated or like gets heated when you act a certain way, so you act a certain other way. This is actually a quite healthy behavior, or it's basically considered a healthy behavior, because you are able to identify a certain situation, how another person reacts to you, and so you adapt. And it becomes then also, and this might be also quite interesting also for the model as well, when a person is not able to adapt, but also at the same time creates problems and difficulties, like the situation, that occurs out of the usage of this behavior, the repeated usage. It creates problems with different people in different times and in different situations. So meaning work, private, and with friends and stuff. This might be considered a disorder. Can be treated. And so you have people who have applied certain behavior, and this is when they are in auto mode. So automatically they will basically use a certain behavior. This is when they're on low energy usage. But you also have a lot of people who are also constantly on high energy usage because they need to adapt to the working environment. This is also quite interesting to see as well. For example, what we have, autistic people, for example, are often on high energy level usage because they need to adapt to the working environment.
Indeed, yeah.
This is why I find it quite interesting, the dynamics that the bot is learning, especially when someone is purposely adapting the behavior.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, again, something to be explored. And we also see how the model really like learns over time, and just communication over time. Yeah.
I can imagine that your solution would not only work for existing teams, but also teams where you want to add additional people. This is what I'm doing with personality analysis. If I have lots of, let's say, type A people, but no type B or C, I might want to consciously add B and C. In terms of soft skills, this can be very important in terms of personality traits, for example. Lots of companies are making the mistake that they are looking for the cultural fit, which manifestates something that is already existing, no matter if it's good or bad. And this, are very simplified terms. With what you are doing, you could rather look for the cultural add.
Exactly. Yeah. But here again, if the company and as well the candidate is open to that and confident in a way, like confident enough to say like, okay, to look at it from that perspective. But I definitely agree, Oliver. We also had considerations of using it rather as an kind of hiring tool or onboarding tool to really make sure that the onboarding process is running smoothly. But we see that, I mean, there are definitely many great solutions out there already, working a lot on that. And for now, for us, it was with the structure that we have put in place, let me say, the easiest. It's definitely not easy, but it's the starting point to work with currently existing teams. But yeah, definitely agree.
What are the next steps on the creation of the model? So what are you working on now specifically, and what are the next steps?
So what I'm working on now is to really onboard the customer that I did, like that we started the onboarding with this week, which gets me quite excited. because they will get access to the dashboard, to the user profile. They will somehow play around with it. And one of the next things that I want to implement are videos that really support and explain different work environment situations and somehow educational content. And that's definitely the next step that I'm looking forward to. And then on top, and where I really want to work towards, is have this kind of performance cycles, personality cycles, and all of that included, so that it really develops into a very dynamic tool that develops and learns over time and supports me really like a real co-pilot, not just in the moment where I'm like, I'm in this and that situation, or help me improve this and that, but rather learns with time.
So basically, and I think I will look forward to this particularly very much. This can also help team leads and engineering managers to understand their team members much better, right?
Definitely. Exactly. I mean, you and those are the ones I'm talking to and convincing of using the solution, right? Because they, of course, want to support their teams better, and on the other hand, want to better understand, like, okay, how do I get my people together and make sure that everyone's happy and working, and that I also get my get to my goals, so to speak.
Do you think that team members will trust? I mean, I'm hopping back and forth, but I think that especially we have discussed this question in general, but especially team members are usually the ones who are like the most anxious about getting analyzed. How can we get rid of this anxiety from them? How can we help them?
Here again, I think in a certain way, education, if I can put it that way. So I usually start with an introduction, of course, and an onboarding call with the team members. And even before that, I spoke, or usually like speak to the team leaders or to the boss to really understand, okay, what's the team setting, and which way do we need to be more sensitive, or what questions might arise, so we can address them directly. So I think on that level, if they feel heard and seen, and get the chance to really ask openly that question, it helps. And I think that such a solution can be powerful at a stage where people are facing challenges but are still willing to work together. If there are challenges that already escalated, or it's very difficult to put a technical tool in between there, I don't think it would be helpful, and definitely no teammate or team member would trust that. There again, I think coach is the right solution to help. But usually in the cases where the teams face like, okay, yes, I'm somehow curious, but I do have a couple of questions, there are opening workshop and some calls in advance definitely help.
What helped me many years back was a workshop of like of course it was also about conflict, but also how to learn to know yourself. As I think if you are a team member and you don't have so much touch points with personalities, because the only thing that you have focused on was like learning how to code and understand machines, and suddenly you need to work inside a team and therefore also communicate. What has helped, like myself, but also then later also other team members, was to learn to know themselves. And I think this might also be a great benefit for them to have some features to learn to know themselves. Because I guess you have the data, you can't just simply present it.
Definitely. And I think it can be so much fun as well to be like, oh yes, like I'm taking time to ask myself, who am I actually, in between all the stuff that I'm doing. So if in a like, I mean, yes, it definitely requires trust and work and pre-work and workshops, like you mentioned it. But I also believe that it really gets people curious. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When I pitched the personality analysis to candidates, also the one that I am using has a different focus. It basically tells what kind of work is charging your battery, so to say, and what kind of work is draining. So if you would do only draining tasks, you might go crazy in a literal sense. You might go sick, you might become sick, you might get a burnout, whatever. It's not fun to do a job like this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could have a job where the majority of tasks that you are doing is charging a battery, you like what you do, you are constantly curious, you want to learn, you want to talk about it, this can be quite fun.
Yeah. 100%.
And the personality test, analysis, the one that I'm using, at least uncovers what charges, what drains the battery.
Mm.
And with communication, it's basically the same. What kind of communication charges you, what drains you. And if you know this about yourself, if you know this also on a team level,
Mm.
you can basically like set up rules, so to say, how to talk to each other. And this can become a very fun environment where everyone benefits.
Exactly.
So it's not a disadvantage to do these analysis. It's more the matter of how you use the results, what for, and what's the overall objective. What you are doing with focusing on communication could actually lead to an environment where everyone likes to be a part of.
Mm.
If you just know how you want to be approached and how to approach your colleagues, basically.
Exactly. And I also think and believe that this is really what shapes a company culture, not something that is given, top down, or every and each team has individually, but something where you can like definitely say, okay, this is how I feel the most comfortable in working, but I also understand that this is the way you feel most comfortable. So let's see how we can, stay in the same boat together and still respect each other and get the work done. So definitely agree. And this is also what I believe, that that's the way how you really shape a company culture, or a work culture in general.
Exactly.
Yeah. And everyone who participates would understand that if you have only introverts sitting there, that might not be the ideal solution. There might be something missing, which can be added through hiring
Yeah,
or a redefinition of someone's role.
exactly. Yeah.
Let me imagine that, because I had a team like that. It was quite difficult to make them communicate.
So how
um,
did
it,
you
it
manage in the
took
end?
I was already the third coach, and it took me like, I don't know, 14 months to create a structure that they are comfortable with.
Hmm. Wow.
But of course, the structure was set up quite easily, but getting used to it was also, and adapting it in a way that they like it. It took 40 months, because they needed to be comfortable with it. This is the thing. And when you set up a certain structure and you do this bit by bit, so don't do this all at once.
Hmm.
It will. So of course, if you leave something out, it will create some problems, and then you know where to pick up the problems because you did it on purpose.
Mhm.
You can lead them to the next step, and adjusting the structure bit by bit, so that they have, like, that the mind is bendable, so to speak. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can adapt another person's behavior by giving it some structure and changing the structure bit by bit. And this was the key. Yeah, so time was the key into this team. So they had already worked together for quite some time, and this was quite interesting. This is why you don't pull a team like this apart just like that, just because they're all introverts. So you take the time and the money to have a certain adaptation and behavior. And I think, yeah, that having a bot like this could be beneficial to analyze and actually be aware of certain behaviors, especially when you set up your new team and you just put people in. Yeah, you do the rage hiring thing. And you suddenly have a team like this, and then you are totally fully aware, okay, this is a full introvert team. Now I need a person who can coach this and adapt, and so that this team works well in the future as well. Right.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, exactly.
Let's come to the last question, Augustina. What was your most happiest and best interview experience that you had?
Interview experience.
Yeah.
Where I got interviewed for a job.
Mm-hmm.
For example.
That's a very good question.
I never got interviewed for a job. I only founded my own startups.
No, but really, I was seriously thinking like, okay, when was the last time I was employed in that job? But okay, it's not that.
But if you have interviewed someone, for example, for your startup, this could also be something.
Interviewed someone for my startup. Oh my God. I mean, so maybe two stories. So the first, like to answer your first question, my best interview. I'm really thinking of. I mean, it was for a working student position, but I remember, and it was for a corporate. So I remember that I did prepare, but usually I just go into the interviews and be like, okay, what's the worst to happen? Them saying no, and then I continue. But I remember sitting in there and they were asking like the general questions. And back then it was more the questions of where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? And why did you choose us to apply? So those general questions. But then somehow the lady who was interviewing me, and I mean, she was there with her team colleague, but we started to pop and exchange ideas on how we can actually like how I can or how we can actually work together, and that felt like really fun. So the guy really had to be like, okay, yeah, like we're coming to an end soon, and was trying to bring the interview back in the right direction. But I really feel like, okay, we clicked right away. And I mean, I got the job afterwards and was supporting business innovation workshops there. So it was really fun how we didn't really just talk about the basic stuff, but as soon as it somehow clicked, we were like, okay, this could be interesting. And oh yeah, I read that. And back then I was still in my studies, so I started to pop in ideas of what I've learned at university and all of that. So I think that really was a good time, really good time. And I'm still in touch with the team until today. So it was cool.
Wow.
A great job interview doesn't feel like a job interview.
Right? You go out there and be like, oh, that was a nice conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coffee time.
Exactly.
And the second one?
Come again?
You said you had a second one, yeah? Second
Yes.
story.
And the other one, to your second question, when I interviewed for my startup, was when I was involved in a lot of co-founder calls and looking for a person to join the team. And I remember I had like quite a lot of conversations and had rough about 20, 22 interviews or conversations, so to say. And I wouldn't say necessarily that there was one who particularly stood out, but rather that I met so many different people in so many different contexts, like I had conversations with people from the US, with people from all over Germany and all of that. And so randomly, like random in a way that I would never have like any touch points with them. And who all in the end said, hey, that was a nice conversation. If you need anything or if I can help you with something or whatever, just reach out and let's talk again. So it really was more like not only it wasn't an interview, but it was more a connection that was somehow created. Not, of course, with all the 20 or 22-ish who I spoke to, but with most of them. And that really like stood out to me. Yeah.
You definitely need to have that, especially when you found a startup. And then if you really find someone who fits inside the startup as a co-founder, it really also needs to click, right?
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you, Augustina. It was a pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Thank you too for the invitation.
Thank you. And we will have the next episode quite soon. And we thank you, Augustina, for being here today. And yeah, bye-bye. Let's say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.